you can start with the mission statement.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Thank you.
We are so happy to have everyone here. I see that Shannon is joining us from Paris. It's always such an honor that she stays up so late to be able to hear these meetings. Janine Quigley as well. I want to remind everyone, especially Janine, because she's our Flagstaff affiliate leader, and she's also our affiliate leader for Helping Parents Heal moving forward after suicide, to just put your name in the side box and the position that you have, either a caring listener or an affiliate leader or a board member, so that everyone knows. Welcome, welcome. I am thrilled that Jeff Hollahan is here tonight. He's a close friend, and he's also a huge part of Helping Parents Heal. So we're very grateful that he's here. Lynn is also here. His wife is here tonight. And if any of you have seen Life to Afterlife, Mom, can you hear me? Obviously, they were a part of it. I feel very grateful that they did that as well. But I want to just quickly read a very short bio that he's given us so that you guys know a little bit more about Jeff. Jeff and Lynn's son, Devon, passed in Frankfurt due to a random act of violence in Germany in November of 2009. After struggling to find a support system to deal with their grief, they were introduced to Elizabeth Boisson and Mark Ireland and were early members of Helping Parents Heal. Lynn is a founding member of Helping Parents Heal as well. Since that time, their boisterous and humorous son has provided repeated validations of his presence in their lives. In fact, they consider Devon to be still right here. As a board member, it's Jeff's goal to help other parents reach the same level of joy and richness of life he and Lynn have found from the realization that our children are just a thought away. I want to add to that Jeff and Lynn are both caring listeners as well, and that they have a Helping Parents Heal Scottsdale Book Club. For some reason, I can't admit these people. There we go. Scottsdale Book Club that has been very successful. I'm going to very quickly just state the people that you've had so far, or maybe you can help me, Jeff. Maybe I could just let you tell the people that you've had so far that Lynn has interviewed. Would you like to go ahead and do that? And
well, sure. And Lynn, speak up if I miss anybody, but I think the first meeting was with Suzanne Giesman, right?
Yes. Yes, I'll say yes.
being in Scottsdale, we have a treasure trove of authors in our area, and she happened to be in town. So we did that. We had Mark Ireland talk about his first book, I think. And then Leanne Hull was the last meeting we had. Is that correct?
Yes, and we also had, oh my goodness gracious, because of Mary. Lynn, help me here.
Is it Lucille?
Lucille, yes, exactly, Masco.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry. I was thinking you would know better than I do, but anyway, Lucille Masco talked about Because of Mary during the holidays, so that was wonderful. But anyway, we're just so happy that you're here. Both Lynn and Jeff are now in Denver, Colorado, because they go there during the summertime. So please, without further ado, welcome Jeff Hollahan.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. It's great to be here. And if I jump up, we've got a storm blowing in. I've got the window open, blowing some nice cool air in. When that cool air turns to rain, I will jump up and close the window. So don't fret. But it's great for me to have a chance to tell a story of our son Devon from a dad's viewpoint. It's great. I see on this first page there's a number of dads with us tonight. Generally, the meetings that I speak at, or the meetings that are held, it's primarily the moms that are there. So it's great for me to be able to tell my story, and also great to see the other dads here, because dads, as you know, we generally go through a different process. We have a different form of grieving, and it's nice to be able to kind of voice our experience. So I'm just an ordinary guy. I don't have any special gifts. I don't have dream visions. Devon doesn't come to me a lot in physical form. I haven't written a book. The only thing I did right in this whole thing is I married Lynn. I married a gal that shared her light with me, and we always joked as a family that Lynn lived her life by the signs she received, and we thought she was whacked out, and we realized that actually that's the way it ought to be. So I need to thank Lynn for accompanying me on this journey and getting me jump started, and helping us to live our best lives as we move forward. So let me talk to you about our son Devon. Devon passed away exactly a month after Morgan. November 21st in Frankfurt, November 22nd our time in Arizona. But he had born and raised in Arizona. He went to the University of Arizona. Graduated from there with a business degree, but he comes from a long line of teachers, and we kind of figured that that would be his calling. So shortly after graduation, he enrolled at a TEFL school in Prague. TEFL, T-E-F-L, stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. It's a very highly accredited school that certifies teachers to go around the world and teach English, because English is the primary language of business around the world. So he moved to Prague. He was having the time of his life, making some great friends, living his best life. And in November of 2009, he went to Frankfurt with an acquaintance to go to a concert. And after the concert, they met with the band, had a late dinner, and they were wandering back to find their hostel for the evening, and somehow got separated. And that's kind of all we know. So the following day, it's Sunday, November 22nd, Lynn and I are sitting in our family room at home. We get a phone call. It's a garbled phone call. There's a lot of static. I thought it was a crank call. I almost hung up. Finally, a voice comes through, and a young man introduces himself as Devon's traveling companion, and gave us a brief outline of what they had done in Frankfurt, said that they had gotten separated, and couldn't find each other. So his friend went to the hostel thinking that Devon would show up later. He woke up in the morning, Devon wasn't there. He called back to Prague, Devon wasn't there. He went back to Prague, Devon hadn't arrived. So the call that we got was basically, your son is missing. So that's how our football game on Sunday was interrupted. Your son's in a foreign country, and he's missing somewhere in Frankfurt, Germany. For lack of a better term, the magic starts almost immediately, because although we had traveled the world, there weren't a lot of places where we had contacts. But in May of that same year, May of 2009, our friends who live in the house immediately behind us had invited us to accompany them on a trip to the British Virgin Islands on a catamaran. And there were 4 couples, including Lynn and I. One of the couples were from Europe, and he was a prominent political writer who split his time between Frankfurt and Berlin. And the chief of police of the state of Hessen in Germany was his best friend. So just right off the bat, these synchronicities of all of the people, of all the places in the world where our son could have disappeared, we had some contacts. And when we had initially called the Frankfurt police, their answer was not unexpected. They said, you know, your son's 22. He's an adult. If he wants to disappear, he can disappear. Well, our friend knew us to be upstanding folks and told the chief of police that if the Hollahan said that something was amiss, that their son was missing, that they needed to pay some attention. So the police immediately got involved and started a search, started circulating the story, started circulating pictures and getting boots on the ground looking for our son. The TEFL program runs for a couple of months, and it runs in series. So you take a class, you graduate, and then the next group comes. The group of kids after Devon graduated, there was a young woman whose mother was the evening anchor at a CBS studio in Charleston, South Carolina. And she called me one night, this is probably 2 nights after Devon had passed, or after Devon had gone missing, and said, you know, she was in tears. She said her daughter called, everybody was upset that Devon was missing, and she said, Mom, you got to do something. So she became a godsend, because she said, look, don't know if this is going to work, but I think if you can reach out to your local news affiliates and tell them the story and get pictures out there, if you can get some press going locally, then maybe the national news picks it up. If the national news picks it up, maybe it gets picked up internationally. And that's really what we needed. At this point, Devon was missing. That's all we knew. And we figured the more eyes that we had looking out for him, the better. So the next morning, I got up, I put my list together, put a letter together, got a couple of photos of Devon, and I just sent letters to all of the local affiliates. I sent one to ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and I was about ready to hit send on the one to Fox, and I got a telephone call, and it was ABC, and they wanted to send a reporter out at 3 o'clock that afternoon to interview us. So at 3 o'clock, 2 things happened. The doorbell rang, and my cell phone rang. The doorbell was the reporter from ABC. The telephone call was from a long ago friend, a young man that I used to be in a church worship team with, who had become, his name is Tom Costello. I don't know if anybody watches NBC News, but he's a prominent reporter on the Washington beat. And he said, look, Jeff, I know we've been out of touch. I heard about your son. Is there anything I can do for you? And I said, Tom, I have no idea. And he said, and Lynn, if you're still there, you have to help me. Is it the Today Show? Okay, I always say Good Morning America. So he said, do you want to be on the Today Show? And I said, Tom, do you think it would help? And he said, well, yeah, absolutely. Same idea that if we get some national coverage, it might go international. So this is November 23rd. This is probably Tuesday. Thursday is Thanksgiving. So on Thanksgiving Day, we had a camera crew from the Today Show in our house, putting together a little video vignette of us preparing a meal without our son. And they had a producer interview us from LA, and it was kind of surreal. And at the time we were really broken up, but all of this stuff with the media gave us something to do, and it really felt like we were helping the cause to find our son. Shortly after that, I got a call. I work for a global investment firm, and I didn't know that we had a global security team, but I found out that we did. I got a call from the global security team, and he said, Jeff, if you don't mind, we now have the police department from Prague, the police department from Frankfurt, Interpol, and the State Department all linked together, and we're going to host a morning call to compare notes and see what we can do to help. So this is a kid that, as far as Lynn and I knew, for a long time, didn't know whether he had a lot of friends. We found out later he did have a lot of friends, but he was very careful about mixing his worlds. His scholastic friends didn't really know about his friends on the Ultimate Frisbee team, and the kids on the Ultimate Frisbee team didn't know about his friends from church back in Scottsdale, and we were part of that. We didn't know anything. So there was one night where Devon said, "Hey, we've got an Ultimate Frisbee tournament in Scottsdale. Can I bring a few friends by?" We said, "Sure." 22 kids showed up with sleeping bags to crash on our floor, and Lynn and I immediately went out to Walmart to buy groceries for 22. Don't know how we pulled that off, but we did. So anyway, we had all of this stuff going on, and it became apparent that we got enough press over here that it was time to go over to Frankfurt. And this is a little choppy, and I'm trying to pick, it's a very long story, I'm trying to pick the highlights. I flew to Frankfurt before Lynn and Kelsey. I got there, and when we landed, there was a member of the State Department waiting in the jetway for me, and he said, there's a lot of press out in the terminal. You want to talk with them now, or you want to wait till you get to the hotel? And I said, I'll talk to them now. So we went out, and it was like you see in the movies. There's bright lights shining in your face and a bunch of guys shoving microphones in your face and asking what we knew. There were rumors that because I worked for a major investment bank, it could have been a kidnapping, and I knew nothing about this. So I just told them what I knew and retired to the hotel. And I stayed at the Marriott in Frankfurt because our friend who lived behind us said that was a nice hotel. He was familiar with it because he used to work there. So I showed up at the Frankfurt Marriott. And again, I just need to say that this is a kid that, to our belief, didn't get a lot of attention. Lynn and I had a very comfortable life, but weren't really out there and weren't terribly gregarious or anything. And all of this stuff just happened. And we knew it was special at the time, but it wasn't until later that we knew how special it was. I showed up to the front desk of the Marriott Hotel, and I introduced myself and said, I'm here to check in. And the guy gave me a funny look and said, could you wait right here? I'll be right back. And he was gone several minutes and came back with the general manager of the hotel. And he said, Mr. Hollahan, we're sorry for the reason that you're here, but I want you to know that this hotel and the entire staff is at your beck and call for as long as you need to be here. And we have held aside the top floor of our hotel for you and your party, courtesy of the Marriott Corporation, for as long as you need to be here. And I was just flabbergasted, and Lynn can attest to this. You can nod if you hear me, that the staff of the hotel adopted us like we were family. They stopped at the bakery. It's not like the food at the Marriott wasn't great, but they would stop at their favorite bakeries and grab us special treats and deliver things to our room. It was an amazing situation, and one that there's no way that we could ever express our thanks deeply enough. From there, the city of Frankfurt really adopted us, because with all the press, people knew we were there. My firm had a big office in Frankfurt. Probably the second day we were there, we started printing out flyers. We would have employees from my employer come by. We would have strangers off the street come by, pick up flyers. They say they're gonna, go out on a subway and jump out of the train and post some flyers, jump back in, go to the next stop and do the same thing. But for a period of 2 or 3 weeks, unfortunately, we were kind of celebrities in Frankfurt, and we got a lot of press. We got a lot of attention. And most of all, at a very, very dark time in our life, we experienced the best that humanity had to offer. Again, we see that now more clearly. We knew it was special at the time, but just really didn't didn't have any idea what it was going to mean to us over the long term. We would go, again, if you've ever been to Europe between Thanksgiving and Christmas, they have what they call the Kris Kringle markets. It's the Christmas markets with the Christmas trees and the Christmas treats and the baking and the cooking and the toys and gifts and all that sort of stuff. And we would go out at night just to get away from everything. And we would be sitting around having a cup of glühwein or something warm because it's bitterly cold in northern Germany and that time of year. And we would be listening to the conversations around us, and more often than not, they were talking about Devon. So again, not sure how it happened, but we were certainly grateful that it did. At the same time, people found out that we were staying at the Marriott, and we got consistent offers from total strangers to come to their house for a meal, to get out of the city, to come stay with them for a period of time, to help us offset what they perceive to be the costs of staying at the Marriott. Again, these are total strangers. It's the holidays, it's a foreign country, and the city just totally embraced us. To the point that one of the couples that kind of befriended us, some American expats, actually figured out a way to smuggle their dog into the hotel. Dogs were not allowed, but they figured out a way to smuggle their dog for my wife and daughter, so they could, get their dog loving at night and stay away from all of the media circus that was going on at the time. So move forward. After about 3 weeks there and multiple discussions with the police and looking at the evidence that they had, we came to the conclusion that the evidence they had supported that Devon had ended up in the Mine River, which runs through the center of town, and that we would be going home without him. So this is more Lynn's story than mine, but the last afternoon that we were there, Lynn had become very close to Deborah Martin. And I think a lot of you may know Deborah Martin from an earlier presentation on Zoom with a healing. And she's an amazingly gifted medium and healer. And through a friend of a friend, Lynn got in touch with her. And one of the first things that she had said to Lynn is that the blackbird will show you the answer. And Lynn didn't know how to take that. I really didn't know how to take that. Neither one of us knew what a medium was. Lynn sort of got a handle on it as time went by. But one of the things that was happening to me during the search is we had a lot of unsolicited calls for mediums whose intentions, I believe, were pure. And I think they really did mean well. But the information they gave us was difficult to act on and really quite horrifying. Like, your son is in a railway tunnel somewhere in Germany. It's wet, he's freezing. If you don't find him in the next 2 hours, he's going to die. That doesn't really help, and it creates more stress. So my first experience with mediums was not a positive one. So when Deborah came into the picture, Lynn jumped on board quickly. I was, shall we say, a bit slower to react. So we'll get to Deborah in a second because there's more there. But anyway, we came home without Devon, and we got home on December the 23rd. It's Christmas. We drive into our neighborhood. There's about 110 homes in our neighborhood. Every single home had a candle, a luminary. And in Arizona, I don't know if you know these, it's the little candle in a paper bag that they use in the Hispanic culture to decorate homes at the holidays. But everybody had a luminary in front of their house with Devon's name on it. And it was incredibly touching. We broke down, pulled into the neighborhood. Neighbors had decorated our house for Christmas. We walked into the house. The fireplace was covered with poinsettias. The refrigerator was full of food. Have no idea what we did to deserve this, but the outpouring of love and compassion was unlike anything we had ever experienced. Christmas comes, and this is where things start to get interesting. We received an invitation from some extended family to go to their home for Christmas. We're not particularly close to this branch of the family, But Lynn's parents, with whom we were very close, were going, and we didn't have a better offer, and we figured it was better than sitting around and staring at each other and crying. So we went out for Christmas dinner. And it was awkward because when we were greeted, it was, "Hey, how are you? How you been?" It's like, "Well, we've been over in the news and our son's passed away. How's your day?" that kind of thing. And it was very, very awkward. It was the 800-pound gorilla. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And so we had an awkward dinner. Very little was said. And at the end of the meal, I'm sitting across from Lynn's mom. I'm sorry, I am sitting across from Lynn's mom, but Lynn asked me to read a text that I had received a couple of days prior. And the text was from one of the teachers at Devon's TEFL school in Prague. And in the letter, she talked about how special the 25 kids in this particular class were, how tightly they bonded, how much they did together. Then she went on to talk about the particular characteristics that Devon brought to the table and what he added. And then she said something interesting. She says, "I don't know what your belief system is, but ever since I was a little girl, when a relative of mine would die, I would have a vision. It would come to me at night, and it was very different than a dream. So it was very clear. I remembered every detail. And I wanted to tell you about a vision I had the other night. And in this vision, I was in St. Wenceslas Square in Prague, and the Christmas market was going on. And I could smell the pine trees. And I could smell the food cooking on the open fires. And I could hear the clip-clop of the hooves of the horses on the cobblestone streets in the ancient city. And the snow was softly falling, and there was a crowd of people. And I looked across this crowd of people, and I saw Devon. And she described exactly what he was wearing. And Devon saw her, and they moved together. And she said, "Devon, where have you been? Don't you know that everybody's been searching for you?" And he said, "Tell them I'm fine, and I've been with them the whole time." I need to backtrack here a little bit because several days after Devon disappeared, Lynn had gone to see a medium or a psychic in Phoenix. And the one message that she got was, "You'll find your son in 4 weeks and he'll be fine." It was 4 weeks to the day that they found his body. And here he is saying he's fine. Now, obviously his definition of fine was different than ours. So this is 2 days after we found out her son has passed. So I'm looking up, Lynn's mom is sitting across, and I can barely see, I can barely read, I'm weeping. But I can see enough to notice that she's got a really weird look on her face. And she turns to her right, she looks to her husband, Lynn's dad, and says, "Would you read the letter that you got the other day?" So he pulls it out, he wipes a few tears away, and he reads a letter from his granddaughter who lives in San Diego. And in this letter, the granddaughter says, "You know, nobody really knows this, but I've had visions for most of my life. And I recently had a vision about Devon. And in this vision, he was in a medieval city. I think it was Spain. She had been to Spain, she hadn't been to Prague, but she described it perfectly. Ancient city, cobblestone street. She said there was a Christmas market going on. You could smell the trees, and you could smell the food, and you could hear the horses clip-clopping away. And there was a crowd of people, and it was softly falling snow, and she saw Devon. She described what he was wearing. Exactly the same outfit that the gal from Prague saw. And they saw each other, they moved together, and she said in the vision, "Devon, where have you been? Don't you know everyone's been looking for you?" She said that he paused and teared up a little bit as if he was kind of remembering his life here with us. But then he said, "Tell them I'm fine, and I've been with them the whole time." So Lynn jumped on this right away. Now I'm kind of thinking to myself, coincidence? I don't think so, but I wasn't really quite ready to jump fully on board. It was more of a process for me. So this began Lynn and my search to figure out how we were going to live the rest of our life. We went to another grief group who shall remain nameless, and we went to a special event that they had. And it was horrible. We showed up. Nobody comes to greet us. I mean, can anybody imagine walking into a room with Elizabeth or Irene and not having them, rush up to you and introduce themselves and introduce you to everyone else in the room, whose names and children's names and birthdays they've all memorized? It was awkward. And without going into any more detail, when we left this meeting, Lynn said to me, if this is our future, we're doomed. And interestingly, on the ride home, Lynn's telephone rang, and it was our son's cell phone from Prague. She got a call from his cell phone. She put some stock into it. I thought it was a coincidence, but I'm stubborn. I'm slower to move. So Lynn had met Deborah Martin early on in the process. After we got home and it got settled in, Deborah and her then associate came over to the house to introduce themselves and really became our lifeline for the next couple of months. There was, this was fairly early on. As I had alluded, Lynn and our daughter Kelsey and I were all in the same house, but we had lost our son and brother. And often you would find us in different rooms in the house. I couldn't bear to look at my girls. I couldn't bear to look at the pain and the loss in their faces, and I'm sure they felt the same about me. So we spent a lot of time in the same house, but not together. So I was in one room. Our daughter Kelsey was in the room that Devon lived in when he was in the house. And Lynn was on her computer in the office. And she got an email from Deborah. And Deborah said, hey, thought you might like to know that Devon's messing around with Kelsey's computer. He's turning on the all caps and repeating words. And Lynn just forwarded that to Kelsey, and 30 seconds later, she yells and comes bounding out. It's true. It's true. I rebooted my computer because all of this weird stuff was happening with the typing. It just wasn't working correctly. So, a small sign, but clearly it's part of the process, and we start to think that there may be something to this. Another night shortly thereafter, I'm sitting in our bedroom, and our dog Kirby, who I think made a brief appearance next to Lynn just a few minutes ago, I was sitting working on my computer, and Kirby came up and very haltingly approached me and barked and backed away and barked and backed away. And I reached out my hand, but it wasn't as if he was really looking at me. It was like he was looking through me. And I got up out of the chair and moved away, and Kirby didn't take his eyes off the chair, and he still acted in a bizarre fashion. There was something there that he saw that we couldn't see. The next time Deborah Martin came over, she just walked past the room, looked at the chair and said, oh, yeah, it's where Devon hangs out. He's there all the time. So at that point, I started making sure that I was dressed when I walked through that part of the bedroom. But again, a little sign, but it was one of many. I think the one that started me on my path of belief, of knowing, which is more powerful than believing, was one day, Deborah said, Devon has been sitting on the edge of the bed that Kelsey is sleeping in, and he's been throwing up a blue ball-like object. And two things about that. Devon was borderline, and maybe not even borderline, OCD when he was younger, and he would do very repetitive things. And he had this little blue cush ball. You remember what those, like little rubber bands all tied together. It's a very squishy thing. You can throw it at people, it doesn't hurt. But he would just mindlessly throw this thing up or down. It wasn't really a ball, but it was a ball-like object. And the night that she said this all happened, Kirby, who always sleeps in our bed, always spends the entire night there, left our bedroom, went into the bedroom where Kelsey was sleeping, Devon's old bed, clawed at that corner where he was supposed to be sleeping, curled up and went to sleep. So again, another sign. The one for me though, that really kind of put me over the edge, and I think Lynn would attest, probably got me excited about this journey. In November, I had an opportunity to get some tickets to see the Phoenix Suns play. And Devon was going to be home for the holidays. And I sent him a note. Hey, I've got these game choices. Who do you want to go see? And LeBron was playing for the Cavs. So his response was Cavs, 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 Cavs. So I got those tickets. Well, he wasn't there to go. So I didn't want to go. Lynn forced me. I was probably the worst date in the history of, like, a bromance, two guys going out to a game. I didn't want to be there. I probably didn't say 2 words, but I did show up. And sitting right in front of us, we were like center court, about 18 rows up. Great seats to watch a game, but as you'll find out, there's some disadvantages. Right in front of me were a father and son. The son was about 7. And the dad was just so great and so patient. The dad convinced the son that Grant Hill was his favorite player. So every time Grant Hill did something good, the dad would nudge the little boy and say, "That was Grant Hill." And the kid would jump up and scream and get all excited and everything. And it reminded me of what I used to do with Devon when he was young. That was one of our things that we did, was going out to sporting events wherever we were in the country or the world, and seeing what we could see. So I probably watched them more than I watched the game. We got to the end of the game, and at the end, the cheerleaders come out and throw T-shirts into the crowd. So here's where being in the 18th row isn't great. Cheerleaders are cute, but generally speaking, even the big guys can't throw a T-shirt up 18 rows. Not gonna happen. Devon had always wanted a T-shirt. He always went down to courtside to see if he could get one. He never succeeded. So I told myself, if I get a T-shirt, I'm going to give it to this kid in front of me. So wasn't likely to happen. But then the Phoenix mascot, the gorilla, comes out with a compressed air cannon. Now it gets interesting. He gets the crowd fired up. He points the cannon away from our side of the court, and everybody in that section rises up and cheers. And then he goes to one end, they cheer. He goes to the other end, they cheer. And then he turns the cannon to our side. And at that moment, it's hard to explain, but this feeling of peace and calm settled over me. I knew at that moment that the first T-shirt that came out of the cannon was going to be right here. And sure enough, well, it wasn't here, it was more like there. But I grabbed it and, reached around in one motion and gave it to the kid. And for the next 5 minutes, the dad was saying, "My son will never forget this game." I was trying to hold back tears, but it wasn't the fact that I gave the kid the shirt. It's the fact that I had this sense of knowing. I had this what's the word I'm looking for? Intuition that T-shirt was coming to me. Never had anything like that happen. I don't think I've ever had that since, but it happened that night. So I got home. It was probably 1:30 in the morning, and I couldn't wait to tell somebody. And that somebody happened to be my wife, who was sound asleep. And I got all excited, and she turned on the light and sat up, and she listened to me with this really bemused look on her face. Then she said, "Well, yeah, I've been talking to Devon all day and told him to show up at the game, so not surprised." But again, I appreciate her having the signs and putting that out there to help us all. So I want to, Albert Einstein had a lot of good quotes. One of my favorite is, "Why memorize stuff when you can look it up?" So the Dalai Lama said, "Tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength. No matter what sort of difficulties or how painful the experience, if we lose our hope, that's the real disaster." All of a sudden we had hope. And all of the things that happened to us happened to us. And we were starting to develop our our friends, we had not yet found Helping Parents Heal. So we didn't have that group, which would have instantly jumped on board with all these stories. But we had all these things that happened to us that if you tell people, maybe they, politely nod and say, wow, that's really cool. And then they shake their head, say those guys are off their rockers. But then we started having some things happen to us while other people were around. The first one was in Chicago. I was there for a conference and we went, again, it was right around Thanksgiving. So the Macy's, which is the old Marshall Fields, was having their Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And we were in there shopping around. I think Lynn found a stocking that said Believe, which seemed like a pretty natural acquisition to our Christmas decorations. But about the time she was picking it out, we noticed that the gift area really quieted down. Everybody had left to go to the Christmas tree lighting in the store. So we're walking through the store. I think Lynn walked first, then Kelsey, then me. And we walked past this rather large round table that was piled high with boxed candy. And on the other side of the table was the floor security guard. And as Lynn walked by the table of candy, a box of candy literally jumped a couple of feet off the table and onto the floor. And it wasn't us who said anything first, it was a security guard. He said, "Did you see that?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "That candy box didn't fall off the table, it jumped off the table." We said, "Yeah, and?" So that, that it's nice to get the confirmation that other people are experiencing what you are. Similar thing happened a couple of years later in the hotel lobby of a Boston hotel. We were actually there for the wedding of one of Devon's friends from Prague, whose parents we had become very close with. We were sitting in the lobby next to a large planter that had those really pretty black rocks in the bottom of the pot. Same thing. We had told them the stories. They knew about our experiences, but we're sitting there. A fairly large rock, probably a pound and a half, jumped, several inches out of the pot over the rim and clattered on the floor. They saw that. One of my favorite memories was the year after Devon passed. We had a Hollahan family reunion in Charlotte, and there's an amusement park near Charlotte, right on the North-South Carolina border. I think it's called Carowinds. And they have this massive roller coaster. Devon and I loved roller coasters. We traveled all over the world riding the biggest, fastest roller coasters. And how he convinced me to do that, I have no freaking idea. But he did, and we had a great time doing that. It was one of the last things we did for the day. And I was with my sister who was visiting, and she knew a little bit about our story, but she really wasn't on board. And I kept telling her, Devon's around. If there's roller coasters involved, Devon's around, there's no doubt. So my sister and I and one of our little cousins are in line to get on this coaster. We get up, we get in line, and each car has 4 seats. Well, we're thinking, oh, great. There's only 3 of us, there's 4 seats, Devon's got a seat. And then they bring in a single rider to get on the ride. Well, they put her in the seat, and it's got a restraint that comes over the top, put her over the top, and it doesn't lock. Let's see. Is everybody still there? Oh, my computer's.
Sorry,
okay.
I got it. Somebody
that's all right. I thought I had done something. Anyway,
No.
they pulled the restraint over, and it doesn't lock. They reset it and they pull it over, and it doesn't lock. And she gets off. They pull it down. It locks. They release it. They put her back on. They put her. It doesn't lock. They said, "Screw it." My sister looked at me and said, "Oh my God, he's really here, isn't he?" So again, it's nice to bring people along in the journey. So we've had a lot of amazing things happen to us. We've brought a lot of people along to the journey. Helping Parents Heal. Again, coincidence or kismet, I don't know, but living in Scottsdale and Our first introduction was to Mark Ireland, who many of you probably know is one of the founders of Helping Parents Heal. He and his wife at the time lived a couple of miles from us. We were very close. And we had some friends who I know had the best of intentions. They came over and it was just like a cry fest. It was very morbid. There was nothing uplifting about it. They left. We couldn't wait to get them out the door. And we were devastated. I mean, there's no way we were going to be able to go to sleep. And we said, what can we do? And Lynn said, well, let's call the Irelands. So we called Mark and Susie, and they said, we'll be right over. You know, they came over, we went out, we, you know, had some chips and salsa and some margaritas at 11 o'clock at night somewhere. And we got to talk and kind of recharge the batteries and bring out the light again. But that's one of the beautiful things about belonging to this tribe, is that I don't think there's any doubt that we all have each other's backs. When Devon passed, we have our house in Scottsdale. It was pretty clear that you know, there were times when it was going to be very hard to be in that house, because Devon was pretty much born and raised in that house. A lot of memories. Lynn said we need to do something. So long story short, in 2011, we came back to a simpler place in our time, condominium complex here in Denver, where we had purchased our very first unit, a 900 square foot condominium. We were newly married and it was great. Our life was simple. So we ended up getting a place here, and pretty much all of our neighbors now have come along for the ride. But the incident that kind of caused that to happen is that early on, the first summer we were here, I'm pretty sure our neighbors knew we had lost a child. Not sure whether they knew whether it was a son or daughter, but they knew we'd lost a child. Didn't know the circumstances or anything, but they came over one night, sat on our back patio, and they said, oh, I think Devon was at our house the other night. It's like, why would you say that? Well, we have these candlesticks in our kitchen, big, tall, like 4 foot tall candlesticks, and they've been standing there for years, but one of them got knocked over the other night. And the first thing I thought of was Devon knocked it over. And we said, well, that's interesting. I didn't think that it was appropriate to share the whole story and let them know who we really were at that time. But 2 nights later, we had that same couple and 2 other couples over on our patio. And the same neighbor said, well, Devon was in the house again. He knocked over that same candlestick. And Lynn jokingly said, oh, well, figures Devon knows the right neighborhood, but got the wrong house. And at that moment, our dining room light, which had been off, turned on. And the look on the faces of the other 6 people around that table was priceless. It's like, how can we excuse ourselves and get out of here quickly? But I say that jokingly. They firmly jumped on board and they've joined us for the journey. It's been a great, we bought it as a therapy house, and I think that not only have we healed ourselves, but I think we've expanded the minds of a lot of our neighbors here, and that's been a fun part of the journey. One of the highlights of this journey, and some of you know about this, some of you might not, and I think Elizabeth alluded to it, we tend to drop the phrase "still right here" often because we believe that our kids are still right here. We not only believe that, we know that for a fact. We know that they know about our lives, they know what we're doing, they know what we're thinking. And we had an opportunity to go up to the dedication of the benches in Cave Creek for Elizabeth and Cyril's son, Morgan, and another young man. And we got a chance to meet Ty and Suzanne Giesman and kind of struck up a friendship and ended up, again, apparently the kids were behind all this. The kids put together a catamaran trip for 4 couples. We had a spectacular time. The kids were clearly there and all, but I wanted to read you something. A couple of days ago, I was going through some things online, and Suzanne ended up writing a book called Still Right Here. But the book, the genesis of the book really was a blog that she had written for her website, and she was composing that while we were on the boat. But I wanted to read the end of this. A vacation with 8 bereaved parents might not be at the top of everyone's wish list, We were members of a club no one would willingly choose to join, but we enjoy a bond few achieve in this earthly life. We have found that once in this club, friendships are deeper, each moment is more precious, and life holds more meaning. Because we've known great sorrow, we know greater joy. Does someone have to die to get to this place? Sometimes the answer is yes. That's the way it works in the school of life. Sometimes it takes a giant wake-up call to awaken the one great truth. It's all about love. And I'm here to tell you right now that truer words have never been spoken. The friendships that we have now with our friends from Helping Parents Heal and from people who haven't lost kids. I remember being hesitant to say I love you to my family when I was growing up. Rarely does an opportunity pass when we get together with friends that we don't tell them that we love them. When we get together, we talk about stuff that matters. There's very little idle chatter about the weather or the local sports teams or anything like that. We talk about stuff that's meaningful, that enriches our lives. And for those of you on this call that I've met, I can't thank you enough for being on this journey. And for those of you I've yet to meet, I can't wait to have that opportunity. I'd like to close with one more quote from Albert Einstein. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is though everything is a miracle. And it's really nice being at a point in life where you have the realization that everyone in our life, every experience that we have is a miracle. So Elizabeth, Irene, thank you for the opportunity to chat. Looking at the list of speakers you've had through this Zoom series, I'm honored to be included with them. But if anybody has any questions about the journey or anything, if we have time for questions, I'd be happy to answer a few. If not, it's been a blast.
We have plenty of time for questions. And you know what? I know that you know that I tear up very rarely. The kids don't let me, but that made me tear up. And I'll tell you, I just feel so grateful for all of the parents that I've met on this journey, and certainly especially you and Lynn. And it is a different kind of friendship when you meet someone who has experienced the same thing that you're going through. And in the very beginning of this journey, and I've said this in the past and I'll say it over and over again, I wished that we could find an island somewhere where we could all go who have all had children pass, because we get each other and we understand and we're here for each other. And unfortunately, a lot of other people think of other things as being much more important than friendship and than caring and loving each other and doing everything that we can to help each other. And I think that once we've been through this, we understand exactly what's important in life. And you and Lynn are shining examples of that. You know exactly what's important. And I love the fact that you read that about what Suzanne said. And it's true. Who would think that going on a boat trip with a bunch of people who had had children pass would be absolutely a blast? But it was so fun. Oh my goodness gracious. And the kids were with us the whole time. And so I think that the important thing to realize is that you and Lynn, more than a lot of people that I know of, talk about the magic, and you talk about the gift that Devon has given you.
Hey, I can't believe that Devon does a lot of this by himself. I know he has partners in crime.
I know that they passed about the same time, so obviously, but I just think that it's important for everyone to understand that all of our kids are working together. Again, I say this all the time, but I hear this from people who are intuitive and see this in meetings, when we have in-person meetings, and they see the kids who are with us and they're high-fiving each other each time that they get us to smile. So they work together to get us to smile. They work together to get us together, to be able to allow us to connect here. They work together to make things easier in our lives as well. That whole story that you told us, Jeff, is just incredible. All the synchronicities, all the people that pitched in to make your journey easier. And then Devon doing things in the different condos of friends around you, which is fabulous. So they all understand you. So anyway, I would love to have people ask questions if you'd like to, because I know, especially as a dad, it's a little difficult to be able to get to the point that Jeff is at right now. But I know a lot of dads like you. We're lucky here in Phoenix that we have Ernie, we have Mark, we have Tony as well with Irene. We have dads who have gone just a little bit further down the road, but also who I think, as you say, have their wives a lot of times who are helping them to understand. And one of the things that I would just like to throw in there that I love about Susie is that the first time that I met her, she told me that our kids are home and we're still in school. And I say that all the time. And I truly believe it. We're still here learning stuff, and they're very proud of us that we're learning these things. And they are still, and they're home, they're having a blast. They're having so much fun. So
It took a couple of spiritual 2x4s upside the head for me, but finally got there.
Well, and you know, I think it's important, whatever meeting you go to with whoever you're there with, I think it's important to know that unless you leave feeling better than when you got there, it's not working. And the difference with Helping Parents Heal is that we know that it's possible to heal from the passing of a child. And we know that our kids want us to heal and that they are going to be with us every single step of the way. They never, ever leave us. We are not moving on without them. We're moving forward with them. And so being able to explain that to parents and let them know that we're all going to be okay if we just let our kids work with us and not shut them out by being too sad. And everybody can grieve as long as they want to, because it's okay with the kids that we grieve as long as we want to. But at some point, they really, really, really want us to be able to listen to them and have fun with them and do the things that they want us to. And to be able to, most importantly, and this is something that you and Lynn do all the time, I don't know of two people who do more for other people, is, and here comes Lynn, is help others. And I think that the best way for us to heal is by helping others. And I think that
if I can interject,
yes,
there, one of the things that I notice at the meetings is within our group, from my experience, the transformation that when parents come to our meetings for the first couple of times, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, but they're takers. They're there to get support. They're there to be lifted up. And the transition from that to them being givers on the other side is amazingly fast, far faster than you would ever imagine. But it's wonderful to see that graduation, that progression from somebody that's, and we all get something, but to be strong enough in your belief and understand enough to know what you just said, which is you get more by giving more.
Well, and I think that you're right, that as soon as you start to get to the point where you can be helping others and reach that hand back and start pulling somebody forward, it helps you so much, and it allows you to move forward so much more quickly than you would be normally. And so you guys have found that secret to healing is by helping others. And again, I guess I didn't even give all of your titles that you now have. So you are a board member. Lynn is a founding member. You're both affiliate leaders in terms of the Scottsdale Book Club, as well as Caring Listeners. And I just feel so grateful. Plus, you were in Life to Afterlife. Mom, can you hear me? And that was a big deal because you certainly were putting yourselves out there. We didn't know what was going to happen with that movie either, but it was such a helpful and healing movie for so many people, and we keep hearing about that.
As I mentioned when I gave the talk in Phoenix, we have a friend who's younger, no kids, hasn't lost a kid, but she's on a spiritual journey of her own, and her search for spiritual material led her to Amazon Prime and led her to watch that movie. So she said, she sent me a text one day with a screenshot of us from that show. She said, I was looking for something, you know, meaningful and worthwhile to watch, and look who I found on Amazon. So, and it was helpful to her. So we kind of think of ourselves as only being able to help those who have lost a child or lost someone. But I think the lives that we lead and the belief system that we have can be helpful to anyone, regardless of where they are in life.
I agree, and Janine has written "It's All About Love," and it's true. I mean, she's a shining example of that. She has 2 affiliate groups herself, which is pretty amazing, and so we're really lucky here in Arizona too, because we have so many affiliate groups. There are wonderful affiliate groups all over the place, but because we've been here a little bit longer, there are so many. And anyway, I don't know if you guys have questions for Jeff. You're welcome to ask questions. I feel so grateful to be able to have you here. And let's see. So G.R. Amy, is that Grammy? Oh, that must be Grammy. Okay, to everyone. Newer to the group, not new to the loss, but so sad the conference had to be canceled. I was so looking forward to hearing more from many of you. I haven't gotten any signs from my son Jake, except through a few mediums. I'm so glad I found this group. I'm in the San Diego group. Well, welcome. Is it Grammy? I think it must be Grammy. Yes. But so maybe you can address that, Jeff.
It's Grammy. Can you hear me?
Grammy, okay.
Grammy. My name is Amy, so my grandchildren call me Grammy.
That's a great idea. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I always have a hard time with this when I think, you know, Lynn's better at this than I am in terms of, I think the question is basically, I've not had any signs from my son. I think we have to be trained to look for what they're giving us. There's a lot of stuff that happened to me that I would have glossed over if Lynn hadn't pointed that out. And I know that she's brought that up to a number of her friends who have suffered losses. And when she talks about, you know, what they're looking for, you know, sometimes we're fortunate, we're blessed, because Devon's personality, both here and across the veil, is loud and boisterous and persistent. And he's not subtle. Let's put it that way. So the stuff he sends us is pretty much in our face, and we see them, we look for them, but sometimes they're more subtle. So I would just suggest that maybe you look deep inside yourself, practice some time meditating, and see what comes into your mind as to something you might look for.
Jeff, I have to interject, and I realize now that this has been missing. Is there more to the blackbird, and was Devon found? And those are 2 things that you didn't answer. Is it possible for you to say a little bit more about those things? This is something that was a question.
Yeah, and I hesitate to do that because I want to do my story. The blackbird was all about Lynn, but yes, the last day that we were in Frankfurt, after Lynn spending 2 weeks literally talking to every blackbird she saw in Germany, we were in the hotel. It was late in the afternoon. It was bitterly cold. It was getting dark. And she said, and by this time we knew Devon was in the river. She said, I have to go down to the river. So we walked a few blocks down, walked down to the river. We walked up to the banks of the river, and I kid you not, but a giant black raven flew down and landed. Lynn and I were probably standing 10, 12 feet apart, and it landed right in between us. And it looked at Lynn, and it looked at the water, and it looked at Lynn, and it looked at the water. And Lynn took that to mean that the raven was telling her that Devon was in the river. And we turned around to walk back up, and Lynn said, nope, I've got to put my hand in the water. I've got to say that last goodbye. And the bank of the river is actually a stone wall. So it's not like you're walking down a gravel or mud to get to the water. So it was probably 8 or 9 feet from the top of the wall down to the water. So we found a set of stairs that went down to a small deck, maybe 4 feet square. And she went down there and got down on her knees. And as she put her hand in the water, that same raven flew down onto this little platform next to her and took a drink from the river. So yeah, the raven did show up, and it in fact did show us the answer.
And there's
and Devon, and to follow up, Devon was found. His body was found actually while we were on a plane flying back to Arizona, about 100 kilometers downriver, near a little town called Koblenz in Germany.
And can you just say a little bit more about the blackbird, or do you want that to be Lynn to say that, about what happened when you guys were walking back to the hotel? Is that possible?
Oh, okay. It really did happen this way, believe me or not. But it's a Sunday afternoon. It's, as I mentioned, it's late, it's dark, it's cold, and we have to walk through the outskirts of the downtown area to get back to our hotel. And my wife and daughter and I are walking arm in arm. We're all heavily bundled up, and we're walking on this very quiet street, and we hear this noise above us, and lining all of the buildings along the street are hundreds, if not thousands, of blackbirds. And as we're walking up the street, the blackbirds are flying off of the roofs, flying toward one another, and then kind of, joining in a row and descending down to the river. I guess if you could have taken a picture of it, it probably would have formed the shape of an arrow pointing at the river, because we're too dense to figure that out on our own. He needs to literally paint a picture. And Lynn's dad is an ornithologist, or a studier of birds by education. And we told him about the birds, described the behavior, and he said, doesn't happen that way. I said, well, it did that afternoon. He said, I have no doubt that it did. So yeah, the blackbirds did show us the answer, and the blackbirds and the ravens continue to show us the answer on a regular basis. Right, honey?
Is she muted? Yes, they do. I know that they do. Goodness gracious, I'll answer for Lynn. Terry is said that, Jeff, you have helped my husband so much tonight. Thank you, which is wonderful. And Roseanne is asking, was anyone ever prosecuted for Devon's passing, or was this an accident?
The short answer is no. If it had happened in London, there probably would have been some video evidence, because the whole city is wired with cameras. It's against the law in Germany. So there was no security footage cam that we could have pulled up. We had heard and continue to hear from mediums that there were 3 or 4 people there. It was 3 guys and a girl, or 2 guys and a girl, and that he fell into the river trying to get away from them, or he was pushed in the river. I think we kind of adopted the fact that we had suffered enough pain, and anything that wasn't going to bring Devon back wasn't worth pursuing. So I don't know that we could have prosecuted anybody, but even if we could have, it's like, they have to live with that. We've got to move on with our life.
I just want to say that Suzanne is saying that your story about the blackbirds is so beautiful. On her son's birthday in May, after he passed, he sent a huge swarm of blackbirds around her in a circle, which sounds absolutely beautiful. Those blackbirds are pretty smart. And
Yes,
then
they are.
Anna is saying, yes, the documentary really helped me accept that my boys are with me. However, sometimes I feel I fall down into the abyss and I cry. I read Leanne's Hull's book, which I can identify myself, and now began reading Mark Ireland's book. I try to work as much as I can so that my mind is busy and not meditating for connections. I don't know if I'm going the wrong way about it by working after hours until late. Has this happened to you? So do you do a lot of work on this, Jeff, or do you basically just let it come?
Generally, I think I'm a fairly happy person now, but it's 10 years. Devon turned 33 last Thursday. Also happened to be the 10-year anniversary of our tattoos. I've heard some people ask this before. Well, how do I celebrate my child's first birthday after they passed? And I said, well, I'm not going to recommend this, but I can tell you what we did. And we actually had a party. We had a number of people meet us at the tattoo parlor. We all got tattoos that were meaningful to us in honor of our son. And we made a party out of it. And since that time, a number of Devon's friends have gotten Devon-related tattoos on their bodies. Many of their parents do not know about that, and we're sworn to secrecy. But back to the question, there are still times that you mourn the loss. I mean, I think that we live our best lives right now, we being Lynn and I. And I wouldn't trade places with anyone on earth for the life that we have right now. But that doesn't mean that you can't get caught up into what might have been. Being invited, one of Devon's really good friends from Prague called me just before my birthday, and as an early birthday gift, asked me to be the officiant of his wedding in Indianapolis in November. And we've been to the weddings of a lot of his friends. We've seen a lot of his friends have babies, and it's hard not to think, what if, what would Devon be married now? Would Devon be a dad? Or not? I mean, we don't know, but I think part of being a parent and suffering a loss is I don't think you ever get over it. And I don't know that I ever want to totally get over it. I want to be able to generate some emotion about this occasionally.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that helps, but yeah, I think it's natural. And we're 10 years into the journey. I'm pretty sure Anna is very, very recent on the journey. So I don't think there's anything wrong with finding yourself in that dark place, but having the courage and the strength to pull yourself out.
Well, Anna is very new on the journey, and she's had 2 sons pass very quickly in just a very short time. So she's doing incredibly well.
And Anna's a giver.
Yes,
I see on Facebook, I see Anna reaching out to parents all the time. So thank you for that.
And she's constantly celebrating our kids. She's working overtime. She's gonna get along that path very quickly. I'm
very quickly, no doubt.
Sure of that. So anyway, I just want to say too that part of the thing for all of us, I think, is knowing how long this takes. Could you maybe tell us when you started feeling like you could actually live this way and you could move forward and you might actually be happy? Was that
3 years?
3 years.
How's that for an answer? And it's kind of funny. And Lynn, I'll ask you for a nod. Was it Mark who told you that it was about a 3-year time frame?
Are you unmuting yourself?
There we go.
Oh,
sorry. Yes, he did. But for me, with all the signs we were getting early on, I knew I had to live my life and it was going to be exciting, and it took me a lot less time. But it was a roller coaster. It didn't happen instantly, but there were a lot of moments right away that I knew we were going to be okay.
Yeah, I would say for me, like 3 years to being the mostly joyful, to actively looking for the bright side in everything, to actively realize that everything is put in our life for a reason, that the pain is a teacher, that the joy is a teacher. It wasn't immediate, but I would say 3 years, it was probably 98% of the way there.
That's wonderful to hear.
I could put on a brave face before then.
Well, and that's important to know. But I also think that the faster that you have the tools to heal, the quicker people are actually going to heal too. So I am really glad that you met Mark and Susie early on, as well as Deborah Martin. I think that she is definitely someone who is a big part of your healing journey. And I think that the more that we learn and the more people that we meet who can help us along the way, the quicker it happens. So,
as Lynn likes to say, the more we learn, the less we know.
which is true.
You just want to keep digging deeper and deeper and keep absorbing more and finding out more of why we're here.
Yes.
And then you realize the answer is always it's all about love. It's just, and especially with all this going on in the world today, the message that we have to share is a universal one.
Exactly. That's beautiful. And Lynn, I was going to ask you if you'd like to say a few words since you found how to unmute yourself. Would you like to just say a few words?
No, I just want to thank Jeff, my fabulous husband, who I love very much, and all of you guys who, we wouldn't be here without each and every one of you. And for those of you new on the journey, it gets better. It gets a lot easier. Life will be joyful. And, we're in this together, and call Jeff or I anytime you want, if you ever want to talk.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And
Yep.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was going to say to Lynn's point, yeah, you found the right tribe to heal.
And I just want to quickly let everybody know, if you were able to see Kirby while Lynn was holding him up, he had a very serious accident a couple weeks ago, and they weren't even able to leave for Denver until later. But he actually had a healing with Deborah Martin, and he's doing so much better now. He looks fabulous. So
He's doing fabulous. Yeah, he is.
I am so happy about that. But I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. If there are any other questions, let me know before we sign off. But what we always do is to unmute ourselves and say thank you and goodbye. And I just appreciate you so much, Jeff, and you, Lynn, as well. And this is so helpful to have this as well. Thank you. And
well, Elizabeth and Irene, keep up the great work. Can't thank you guys enough for all of the effort you put into the conference, and now you've figured out a way to keep us all engaged, and can't thank you guys enough. I don't know where you find the time or the energy. We can blame Carly and Morgan, I guess, but you guys are both just amazing.
It is awesome. And thank you. So everybody unmute yourselves, say goodbye, and we're just so happy that everybody was here.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.